All right, guys. So today I'm going to teach you a strategy that will help you with citing text evidence when you use the race strategy. It's underlining your text evidence when you're reading. So that's the strategy. It's just underlining. And I'm going to show you how I do it so you can see how to do it yourself, and then you can use it in your own work. So what I've got here is a little passage with some written response questions, like the kind we might use the race strategy for. But instead of answering these written response questions in writing today, we're going to underline the text evidence in our passage. So first I'm going to read you the passage, and then we'll get started. This one's called The Prankster. Gus was a mischievous guy. He always played pranks on people. Gus popped out of a clothes hamper, making his mother scream. He put a pickle in his little brother's shoe. But then he dreamed up a real doozy. One evening, he switched the contents of the milk and orange juice cartons. He couldn't wait to see what happened. Maybe his dad would pour juice in his coffee. Only problem, by the next morning, Gus forgot what he'd done. At breakfast, he tried to pour milk onto his cereal and added orange juice instead. Yuck. The whole family laughed. Gus had pranked himself. Okay, so we've got these written response questions that we would normally answer with race. So the first one is, what is Gus's personality like? What is his personality like? So I want you to think about the answer to that question from what I just read. Think about how you would restate the question in your answer if you were writing it for race. So what is Gus's personality like? I would say that Gus is a prankster, right? It's the title of our passage, and we know he liked to play pranks on people. So I would say Gus's personality is that he is this prankster, or Gus is a prankster. Make sure it's a complete sentence, but that could be your R and A. And now, if I was writing that, and I was ready to go back and to go on to the C and write my text evidence, I would go back to my passage, and I would underline the text evidence that I need to cite. And that just makes it easier for when you're writing that C sentence, you can see it's underlined in the passage, and then you can just kind of copy what you need to copy from the passage. So because this box is yellow, or it's kind of a yellowish orange, I'm gonna underline the answer to this in yellowish orange. So I want you to try to look in here, try to find the text evidence for this answer. Why do I believe that Gus is a prankster? Did you find it? Well, it's the very first couple of sentences. Gus was a mischievous guy. He always played pranks on people. So that is my text evidence. That's why I believe Gus was a prankster. So I need to cite that in my answer if I was writing this whole thing out. What about this green question over here? What prank did Gus play on his brother? What prank did Gus play on his brother? I want you to go back in there, find the answer to that. Think about how you would restate the question when you're answering it. So I would say Gus played a prank on his brother by putting a pickle in his shoe. So I restated my question when I said that. Gus pranked his brother by putting a pickle in his shoe. Now, how do I know that's the right answer? Where did I find that information from? I need to cite my text evidence. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to underline my text evidence for that question so that I know what I need to write in my C sentence. So can you go find a sentence that would be your text evidence? Did you find it? So why do I believe that Gus put a pickle in his little brother's shoe? Because it says it right here. He put a pickle in his little brother's shoe. That's my text evidence, and I underlined it in green because this was a green question. Let's do the last one. Who does Gus prank at the end of the story? So I need to find the answer to this, and I need to restate the question in my answer, make it a complete sentence. So, who did Gus prank at the end of the story? Gus pranked himself, right? So I would write this out by saying, at the end of the story, Gus pranked himself. That would be a complete sentence that uses some of the words from the question, the PQA, to make it in a complete sentence. Now, if I think that's the answer, if I think Gus pranked himself, I need some text evidence from this passage to cite. Why do I believe he pranked himself? I need to go back and underline my text evidence. So can you find a sentence that would work for text evidence for that answer? Well, how about this? At the very end, it says Gus had pranked himself. That's word for word our answer, right? So that can be our text evidence. Also, we could say that he switched the contents of the milk and orange juice cartons, but he forgot what he had done. And then at breakfast, he poured milk onto his own cereal and added orange juice instead. So that one really has text evidence in a lot of different places, or it could just be right here, Gus pranked himself. Okay? So there's multiple sentences that could be text evidence for each of your questions, but, we're just trying to find the best one or a really, really good one. Okay? So this is the strategy I'm showing you. I'm showing you that if you have the same kind of question, if you have a written response question, you're using the RACE strategy, you can go back into the passage and underline your text evidence. And that will make it easier for you when you go to write that C sentence. So I'm going to show you that. We got the same little passage here, and we're going to write out what we know about race, the R, A, and C, to the answer to this question. What is Gus's personality like? And I've got my R and A that I told you on the last slide. Gus has a prankster personality. Okay, I restated my question in that answer. I used some of those words. Gus has a prankster personality, right? Gus's personality. So it's a complete thought. It has to be a complete thought. That's so very important. So where was my text evidence for that? Do you remember? Well, we said here that Gus was mischievous and he always played pranks on people. So now when I go to write my C sentence, I've got that underlined, so I know that's my text evidence. I always start with a sentence starter, right? So I'm going to say, according to the passage. And then I'm going to paraphrase. That means put in my own words. I'm going to paraphrase that text evidence that I just underlined. I'm going to say, Gus is mischievous and likes to prank people. So there's my C sentence, right? I cited my text evidence, and I cited it right here where I tell you where I found my information from. And then I paraphrased that text evidence that I underlined, okay? So the underlining helps you find the text evidence so that you can then quickly refer back to it when you're trying to write that C sentence. So let's do this another passage kind of like this. Every 4 years. Every 4 years, we elect a president of the United States. Here's how the process unfolds. First, about 18 months before the election day, Democratic and Republican candidates announce their plans to run for president. In the following months, they give speeches and hold debates. They try to win supporters. Then, beginning in February of the election year, states across the country hold their primaries. Primaries are elections to choose one Democratic and one Republican candidate. They're a bit like the playoffs in sports. Once these candidates are chosen, they campaign until November. Finally, in November, Americans vote to decide who will be the next president. So we've got 3 questions here. They're all different colors so that we can underline in different colors. The first one is, what happens first in the election process? So think about your answer to that. Did you find it? Okay, so the first thing that happens in the election process is that Democratic and Republican candidates announce their plans to run for president. Okay, so notice how I said that. I said that with my PQA. It was a complete thought, okay? So you cannot forget the R. You cannot forget the R. So now that I've got my answer, I need to go back and underline my text evidence so that it's easy for me to write my C sentence. So what am I going to underline? What sentence am I going to underline for that text evidence? So right here, it says first, about 18 months before Election Day, Democratic and Republican candidates announced their plans to run for president. That's the sentence that made me believe my answer was the correct answer. Okay, so that's my text evidence. Now, our second question is, what are the primaries like? So, the primaries are like playoffs in sports, right? The primaries are like playoffs in sports. So notice that the way I worded that had my PQA. I used some of those words from the question in the answer, okay? I didn't just say, okay, what are the primaries like? Playoffs. No, I didn't just say one word. I made a whole complete sentence. The primaries are like playoffs in sports. So now that I've got my answer, I need to find my text evidence. So what sentence am I going to underline for my text evidence? Why do I believe my answer is the correct answer? Well, right here, there's a sentence that says, they're a bit like the playoffs in sports. And I know it's talking about primaries there. Primaries are elections to choose one Democratic and one Republican candidate. They're a bit like the playoffs in sports. So that's my text evidence. That's how I know my answer was correct. All right, my last question. Is a new president elected in October? So if I was answering this question and I was just going to jump straight to my answer, forget all about my R, not restating my question, I would just say no. But is no a complete sentence? No, it's not. It doesn't tell me what I need to know, right? It's not going to make sense to somebody who's just picking that scrap piece of paper up off the floor that just says no. They're not going to have any idea what that means. I have to be super clear. I have to restate my question. I have to say, a new president is not elected in October. That is a complete sentence. It uses some of those words from the question in the answer. Okay? So I need to go back now and underline my text evidence for that. Why do I believe that's the correct answer? Well, here it says they campaign until November, and in November, Americans vote to decide who the next president will be. So I underlined that in red because that's my text evidence for that question, right? That's why I think they can't be elected in October because we don't even vote for them till November, okay? So there's my text evidence. Let's see what this looks like if we're really using the race strategy and writing out our answers. Is a new president elected in October? We've got we restated our answer here, restated our question and our answer. The new president is not elected in October, just like I said. I didn't just say no. I wrote a whole sentence, okay? New president is not elected in October. See? A lot of the same words, okay? All right, and I said that my text evidence for that was down here. They campaigned till November. So that's all my text evidence. I went back and underlined it. So now I'm ready to write my C sentence. I know I need to start with a sentence starter. So I'm going to say, according to the author, Americans vote in November. And I paraphrased that. I put it in my own words. So I was able to look at what I underlined and read, but then I put what I underlined in my own words, okay, when I cited it. So does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to you. And you remember I'm showing you that if you underline things, it makes it easier when you go back to write that C sentence, okay? So your assignment for today, you have a passage to read and several questions, and you're not going to be writing anything today. You're just going to be going back to underline that text evidence. So this is just really good practice for finding the text evidence and practicing underlining it so that when you do go to actually write your answers, you know, you already have it underlined and then you could just, quickly paraphrase it, okay? I hope this helps you with citing text evidence.